You're busy, you've got a decent practice, but nobody wants to be decent. You want to be great, and you want to have a great practice. So how did the most productive, profitable dentist in the nation balance real life, work, and profits, and somehow make it all seem fun? Well, it comes down to simple, everyday practices. So grab a lunch, join us as we chat with top clinicians and influencers to discover their formula for uncommon success. Are you ready? Then it's time to explore everyday practices with Vicki McManus-Peterson and Dr. Chad Johnson.
Hey everybody, this is Chad Johnson here with Vicki McManus-Peterson, and we have our special guest today, Dr. Mike DiTolla. And today we just got straight into our podcast, so let's join in.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. This is super exciting for us.
Oh, good. Me too. I love doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we typically talk to everyday docs who do everyday things, and I realize that you are such a rock star, and but you have so much practical advice for everyone. So
I'm full of advice for everyday, for everyday dentists, based on kind of my experience of what I've seen. Being in the laboratory and otherwise to try to help people get better everyday results. And that's who I've always focused on. I learned early in my career that my path was not to be one of the amazing aesthetic dentists or whatever, who had this set of hands on loan from God. I learned very, early on that my path in dental education was going to be to help average dentists do the simple things day in and day out successfully in their practices. And, so it was kind of like, forget about the bottom 10% who's not even interested in getting better, and forget about the 10% who they could probably prep a tooth with a handpiece in their foot and make it look fat.
Right.
So you get rid of those, and it leaves you with the 80% of average dentists who do everyday dentistry and are looking for tips.
Are you not supposed to use your feet? I mean, if you wash them first, is that okay?
That's all. If you can duct tape a high-speed handpiece to your foot and prep a tooth, go for it, as long as the patient's all right with it. Maybe a rubber dam would be a good.
I'm PPO, so I've got to work two ops at once.
Hey, as long as I get to put your feet in the autoclave, I think we're going to be fine.
Right. I think that's fine. You're right. That should do it.
Mike, I got to say, I first ran across you at the Spear Education Center. It was 2011, and you were there talking, maybe 12, but somewhere around that time frame, and you were talking about incorporating CADCAM dentistry into people's practices and stuff like that. And at that time, I was just getting into it. You were a riot, and I swear I just had to wipe my sleeve on my crying tears from laughter, because it was so ever since then, when we started our podcast, Vicki, you can attest to this, but I knew that I had to get you on board when we started making a list of people. You were kind of one of my rock stars peoples, because really you've made a difference and I remember taking notes on your lectures about the trends for zirconia at the time, and for modelless crowns and everything like that, and the lab work you were showing, some of the in your lecture, the goods and the bads and the trends and everything like that, and it was really good. Do you remember the evolution of that lecture? I'm sure you gave it 100 times.
Yeah, I do remember the evolution of that lecture, and it's kind of a long-ish story, if you want, but I had started lecturing with Sirona because at Glidewell, we owned more of their mills, their MCXL mills, than any of their lab did originally, because we're milling all of our EMACs at the time. And so they used us as an example of what a dental lab could look like that was incorporating Sirona technology. And at the same time, we accepted more digital impressions than anybody else, because we got onto that really early. And so they liked us for that. And so all the Sirona speakers out there were talking about doing chairside CAD-CAM, but they also realized that there was a market for people who were going to have a digital impression system and weren't interested in making their own crowns and just wanted to work with their lab. And so that's what I was brought on to speak about. And they wanted to make sure that Sirona had kind of the best of the best when it came to speakers. So if you wanted to speak for Sirona, you had to take a speaking course, and the one they decided on was Paul Homley's course. And I had already taken Paul's course once, but the first time I took it, I really didn't do anything with it. Is one of my only natural talents that I was born with is public speaking. It's certainly not dentistry. It's not, in fact, I haven't found anything else, but
I really think that self-deprecating authority that you come from is just hilarious though too, where you're just like, listen, I'm teaching you all about this because I'm really horrible about drilling. That was so.
Well, it's the truth. It's not, I'd call it, to me, self-deprecating is what you call if it's not true. But I really was in remedial operative. I'm not making this up. There's no point in confessing you were in remedial operative. I went to dental school with my cousin who has so much talent. David's unbelievable. And he just could prep teeth from the second that we started doing it in dental school. I knew, in my head what it was supposed to look like, but I couldn't make my hands do it until I found a way where I could prep teeth and get the same results. It's kind of like, in my mind, why Magic Johnson, Wayne Gretzky, people like that don't make very good coaches, but the scrub players like Phil Jackson and Pat Riley, who had to figure out how to be able to hang with these guys to even sit on the bench.
Yeah. So Derek Jeter might be a good, what do you think with him hitting, base hits and stuff like that? Do you think he'll make a good coach someday?
I think somebody who has to teach themselves how to get great results. If you were born with natural talent, you will always be an artist and always be amazing, but you're not going to make a good teacher. You're going to be very frustrated because other people just don't get it. Mm-hmm. And for myself, I had to experiment for a couple of years before I found a prep technique that allowed me to get to that same place, but it was not artistic at all. I mean, embarrassingly so. It was very like prep
methodical.
By numbers, almost. Yeah, by numbers. It got me to the same spot. So I've learned not to be embarrassed by that anymore. But no, public speaking is kind of the only gift that I've been able to identify. So we had to take this Paul Homley course a second time, and this time I took it seriously, and I designed this hour from start to finish, and I gave it probably 20 or 25 times that year, and then it kind of accumulated with giving it at CEREC 27 and a half, and there I put a new story. I told this hairpiece story I'd never told before about my old hairpiece. That was self-deprecating. That was self-embarrassing. And we put that on the front of that and gave that talk there as well. And then after that, I basically retired that talk. But that's kind of the way it would be in a perfect world, is that you start to put a talk together and you get the opportunity to give this hour, for example, this keynote kind of over and over and over and work on it and sharpen it. Because it's tough to just come up with the talk for kind of the first time, especially if you're trying to be entertaining. If you're not going to be entertaining, then it's just information. But if you really want to earn and keep the audience's attention, it's difficult because you have to use storytelling and other methods of disclosure to kind of connect with the audience and keep them interested in them.
Well, like you called it, Paul Homley's book, just because you're an authority
or an expert.
Expert, that's the word. Just because you're an expert doesn't mean you're interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly it. And there are a lot of speakers who have great clinical material, and if they're exposed to something like Paul Homley's program, or they've asked me before for help, and I'll work with them. Okay, we need some stories, and they're like, "Well, that just seems silly. Why are we putting stories into this lecture?" I'm like, "Because the people have to connect with you," and they're like, "Well, why do they have to connect with me? I'm presenting information." I'm like, "Well, I don't, well, because they'll listen more, they'll listen better, they won't be bored. It's going to be a long day." And so
it depends on how big of nerds they are. Because I mean, some people would totally geek out on the driest material if you show them blood and amalgams and composites and implants. It's true. I mean, that some people would just be like, "No, that was great. It was very lecture oriented." And then other people, nod off. And I think you and I are the same ilk, that we would just be like, "Oh my goodness, let's go to lunch early," but.
Nobody complains that dry, boring material was made interesting, by somebody who was a great speaker. And you know what? I used to err the other direction. I used to get complaints all the time that it was too entertaining, and which I didn't used to think you could be, but literally it was so much storytelling and humor that I was like holding back on material because we ran out of time. And I would get reviews that said, "Hey, look, if I wanted a comedy show, I would have gone to the Improv."
Oh, gee.
And so I was like, and the issue there, well, I know it sounds weird, but it was really, I was kind of making it about me and what I wanted to do, which was keep this entertaining. And when they would laugh me, I just got encouraged. And so it'd be a full day lecture that would start like at 8:30, and we get to the first break at 10:30. And Dennis would come up and go like, "Are you going to talk about teeth?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot. You know, I kind of got on a roll talking about this other stuff."
Boy, I just flew in and my arms are tired.
So there is a balance there. You can go too far in the other direction.
Wow.
Hey,
I wouldn't think so, but that's interesting. Yeah.
Mike, you just said a couple things that were really profound. I'm actually here taking notes. This is so cool. And let's see if you can, let's find a dental application for this. You said, if you were born with talent, you'll rarely make a great teacher or leader because you'll be frustrated with the students because they just don't get it. So find instructors, teachers, coaches, leaders who've been in the trenches and made mistakes, because these are the guys and gals that'll show you the ropes. And then this last little bit of goodness was, and I'm paraphrasing here, good leaders and great lecturers know that it's not about them, it's about the audience, it's about the team that you lead. So with the technology and the things that you talk about and the kind of simple everyday practices, how do you take these concepts that you embody so well, how do you help doctors understand how to translate and engage their team into making changes? Is that part of what you do at all, or?
Not specifically. I mean, but I think that I've always found that the team has more confidence in the doctor than the doctor has, you know, in themselves. And so part of being a leader, and a good example is when you add something new to your practice. And we've been, I mentioned, happened to mention 6-month smiles earlier. And so that's something that comes up. I get questions from time to time from dentists saying like, what's the one piece of advice you can give me to become a better cosmetic dentist? And I thought about it for a long time. And I thought about maybe it has something to do with labs or materials. And those are kind of all part of it. But my standard answer to that question now is learn how to move teeth. You know, if you want to be a real cosmetic dentist and call yourself a cosmetic dentist, you've got to learn how to move teeth, because in the 50s and 60s, orthodontists were the original, you know, cosmetic dentists. You know, yeah, they were solving some posterior cross bites, but let's face it, a lot of what was being done was parents bringing in kids so their teeth would look better. I know, and be healthier and breathe better and all this stuff too. But we get into these.
Well, but we didn't know about be healthier and breathe better back in the 50s. I mean,
Yeah, well, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it was. We didn't realize that. You know, that to help develop the maxillary arch, they're going to be able to breathe better. They're going to have less problems with allergies and things like that as well. And obviously, if you develop the arches and make enough room for the teeth, TMJs are going to be healthier, and all kinds of things are going to end up being better, including sleep apnea problems and bruxism and grinding and all. When it gets and kind of wraps their head around this, they'll come take like a 2-day, 6-month smile course, and then they get very nervous going back to their practice to do it because they've never done it before. It kind of helps now that you see like Smile Direct Club on TV where patients are doing their own orthodontics at home, and I'm like, okay.
Are you scared about that?
I don't know if I'm scared about it. It certainly strikes me as odd. I'm old enough to remember that when Crest started selling white strips, that as dentists, we all freaked out and we're like, whoa, we're supposed to be doing this in the office. You can't let them bleach their teeth at home. And now that you look, 15, 20 years down the road, you're like, okay, well, this worked out okay. This is pretty safe.
Right.
But patients doing their own orthodontics at home kind of cracks me up. Because it's like, I feel like there should be an orthodontist in there somewhere. And so it's like, well, they do take pictures of their mouth with their iPhone and send it back for people to look at. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sure that's going to turn out.
But still, it's not inexpensive, is it?
No, it's not. It's still, I think, like $2,500 on average or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
And how does that compare to like 6-month smiles or some of the other aesthetic type teeth movement that we see in office?
I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she said, I can't believe it. She said, my son went to an orthodontist for a consultation, and he's 15, and the orthodontist gave kid kind of 2 choices. We could do it with this, with brackets and bands, or aligners. And the kid, of course, chose aligners, which I think is a mistake for a 15-year-old male. I mean, talk about the least compliant people on the planet is a 15-year-old male. So, but anyway, she said, "Oh my gosh, he wants to charge us $5,400 to do Invisalign." And I was like, "That sounds about right." And she goes, "Yeah, but I see on TV that you don't even need a dentist to do it. The patient could do it themselves." I'm like, that is going to sound weird to patients going in if they want to do something like aligner. So, but with Invisalign or with 6-month smiles, it's up to, the dentist, the providers to choose whatever they want to do. But at least with 6-month smiles, because you're using fixed appliances, it doesn't look like you're taking something. The dentist isn't taking something it could have bought on TV and just handing it, to the patient, charging.
And there's oversight that also helps, when there's a mid-course correction that's necessary, refinements.
Right.
Can I shout? I don't know if I've ever told you this. My mother went through full ortho in her 40s. And then as she got older, she's part of that population of petite women that as they get older, their arches kind of narrow even more. And it kicked out, 8 and 9 again. And she had migraine headaches for 30 years. And so those were her 2 challenges dentally. So we flew her to Dallas, and Bruce, she had, oh my God, like a maxillary tori to beat the band. It was like 3 lobes. It was in line with the plane of occlusion. Every time she ate, she was doing with the roof of her mouth. I've never seen anything like it before since. So Bruce had, CADCAM back then. He sliced it all up, smoothed it out, got the tissues reset, and her migraines went away. She also got a splint. Jeff did some splints for her for the TMJ. Migraines went away. Everything's great. And then she's like, "Vicki Lynn, could I get my teeth straightened again?"
Yes.
And I said, "You're 72 years old. Why do you want your teeth straightened?" And she said, "Because I noticed my mom's did the same thing." And then she put her hand over her mouth, and then she got so embarrassed, she just started shutting down, and she wouldn't come out and see the family. And she said, "I just don't want to get old and cranky." So I found a dentist who would do 6-month smiles for her, but he was freaking out because A, it's my mother, and he was a client, and B, he didn't want to trigger her migraines, right? So we took a year. He did the upper arch while she wore her lower splint at night. Then they stabilized the top. We did the appliance there. Then they did the lower. So are you seeing, like, we just kind of made up the protocol back then because it was, 8-9 years ago, but are there more protocols like that coming? I just feel like there's so much control with that procedure. It's really great. I mean, the difference really in 6-month smiles from where it was, say, 10 years ago to where it is now is all the digital technology that's been pushed into this treatment process. And so it used to be that, it depended how long an average case would take. 6 months is kind of a goal, not a goal per se, but considering it's limited orthodontics, cosmetic changes to the anterior teeth, it's not the full 2-year one that we typically see, but some cases can take longer. We're actually starting to see case times get shorter because the digital placement of the brackets on the models in the laboratory, and then there's a suck down that's done over that. So it's a bonding tray that gets sent to the dentist, especially great for a new dentist who's just getting into ortho, to know that the brackets have been digitally positioned according to this treatment plan exactly where they need to be. And this shaves time off the start to the finish of it, because one of the things in orthodontics that used to slow things down by months was if you had a bracket off just a little bit, and as the teeth all moved in, you could see that bracket wasn't in the right place. So either you had to take it off and rebond it or put a bend in a wire, and it just introduced more kind of human error into the treatment result. And so the ability to do this digitally, and then the dentist gets a digital treatment plan. It's something called the Confinex 360 from 3-month smiles that shows them every visit when the patient's there, where the teeth should be, what to do next. And it's like a cookbook to walk them through. So for these dentists who didn't get trained in dental school to do any ortho, in fact, we were scared by the orthodontists in dental school not to do ortho. Yes, you were.
There should be a class action lawsuit about this. So a bunch of orthodontic societies and state dental societies are suing Smile Direct Club because patients are now doing dentistry at home. But the general dentists, they should be suing the orthodontic societies for not teaching us anything in dental school and making it such a mystery.
Yeah, we're victims.
We're terrified. Yeah, we're victims. But it's really, I'm not saying it. Let's not actually do that. I'm just saying, I'm just saying, if we came out that poorly trained to do crown and bridge and endodontics and other things that we do on a routine basis, it's ridiculous. So why this is the one specialty where we got shortchanged?
Can you see digital DIY implant placement? Can you imagine, you order your box and you've got this battery operated motor that you put it into the surgical guide. It's kind of crazy to think that we laugh about it now, and in 5 years someone might go, no, I was listening to that podcast and I thought to myself,
that ought to be, that ought to be a challenge on Survivor.
Well,
they have YouTube videos on it. Have you seen the dentists, Mike, that have placed their own implants? There's 2 of them out there.
Yes, I mean, I'm inspired by Smile Direct Club. I want to start Implant Direct Club, where we send a surgical guide and a handpiece, and the wife does it on the husband.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we'll be there on Skype to kind of answer questions.
You can do it for your dogs.
Yeah, no, we're going straight to humans. We're not doing
whatever you want.
Animal trials.
Right.
By the way, Vicky, just getting back to your mother, I once broke up with a woman because of a palatal tori.
I don't want to go down that path. So let me ask you this, Mike.
Well, wait, hold on.
So rapidly change the subject.
I feel like I need to clear that up a little bit.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
It was at the beginning of dental school. I think I maybe was getting turned off anyway, but I learned what tori were, and then I saw her big palatal one, and then that was just the final straw. So we ended up breaking up. Ironically, it turns out I have mandibular tori, so I'm so superficial. I'd break up with myself.
Oh, what a hypocrite, man! You're gonna have to break up with yourself.
By the way, that's the first time I've ever said that out loud, because I hadn't thought about it.
Hold on. Let's get really intimate here. What was her first name?
Stop it, Chad.
What?
Her name was Susan.
You think this might get back to Susan?
No. I'm just saying this is how lecture stories
are born. Podcast history right here.
I've never said that out loud before, but to see your guys' reactions, I cannot wait to in all my lectures from now on say I once broke up with a girl because of palatal tori, and I realize you just let it hang there, and what the audience is thinking is way worse than anything I could say, and then I backpedal it and maybe take it into a story about orthodontics or something like that. So,
oh my God.
Thank you for letting me try out new material.
Thank you. All right. Well, I want to talk about your ADN Live network. ADN Live. What the heck? Is it going to be as fun as this? Because this is like, I can't imagine you more live than this.
No, it's not going to be, it won't be this fun. It'll be pulled off the air if we had that much fun. So I started with working with AEGIS, and they own 3 of the great magazines in dentistry. They've got Inside Dentistry, they've got Compendium, and they've got Inside Dental Technology. And Dan Perkins, the CEO, we ran into each other at Chicago Midwinter last year, and he said, I said, how's the magazine business? He said, it's everybody's, getting a little bit tougher. If you look at them, they're all getting a little bit thinner. He said, I really had this idea. He said, I want to start something called AEGIS TV. And I was like, oh, this sounds exciting. We at Glidewell, we did lots of clinical videos and put out videos. We had a weekly show that we did. I was just looking up an old video today, this veneer video that we put out in 2014. And it's got 1.6 million views. In fact, the top rated video we put out there's got almost 3 million views. And so I've always been a believer in the power of video content. And so Dan just happened to have the same idea. He said, I want to make the Netflix of dentistry. So instead of going to, comedies, dramas, and horror movies, we're going to have implant, restorative, perio. And he wanted me to have a show called ADN Live, like the one that we did Chairside Live at Glidewell. And so we've started creating these video channels, and we want to be the first media company to really get big into this. Most of the sites that are out there now have been kind of subscription sites, and they're dedicated to a single technology. There's some great ones out there. Sarek Doctors, 6 Month Smiles has this provider resource center where they can go see videos and look at cases. And we want to do one that's kind of for all the general dentists out there, and even some of the specialists, because Compendium really leans more towards the specialties. So we're going to have that kind of flagship show, ADN Live, which is going to be kind of education, entertainment. And then the more serious content is going to be on the different channels, like the restorative channel and the implant channel and a product talk channel. And so we just released the first series of programs, the Product Talk one, season 1. And then the ADN Live show will probably be ready to be released in March of this year. And we just released one called IDT Weekly, which is a look at dental laboratories and the dentists who use them and the interaction with that kind of technology. So yeah, it's very exciting. I feel like my whole career is kind of building towards creating a video platform like this.
Well, and I noticed in October that you had Dr. Margis, who's on the other side of town of me. We're both in Des Moines, Iowa, and that you've had Dr. Bakeman on there from the AACD. So you're getting some great content on there. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it's really nice because it allows companies to, sometimes they want to work with KOLs they've already had exposure to. Sometimes they'd like to be introduced to another KOL who they always wish could be using their product. And so we're getting the product in the hands of these dentists who are all on the inside. They're all Inside Dentistry board members. And we give them the opportunity to use it and go visit with them and interview. And then they share a case with us. And I'd really like to kind of up it in the next season or two and be able to actually go and film actual clinical footage of them using the product. So I've been working on coming up with a more mobile way to go into offices. At Glidewell, we had this huge operatory where we could roll in big cameras, and I want to find a way to make that mobile so we can go into these KOLs' office and film them doing a case and produce some really great content that way as well.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, Michael, man, oh man, no doubt we could go for about
I know
342 hours here. But how do we subscribe to ADN? What's the process here? Give us some our listeners some information on how to connect to all this goodness.
Well, it's all kind of connected through AEGIS, which is spelled AEGIS. But for example, if you went to like InsideDentistry.net or any of those AEGIS sites, you can sign up. We also have something called CDE World for like Continuing Dental Education World, and CDE World. One of the segments on the show is I pull my favorite pieces of continuing education from that week. Some of them come from CDE World, some of them come from outside, but any of those AEGIS properties, whether it's Compendium or Inside Dentistry or AEGISDentalNetwork.com, any of those will get you onto the mailing list and you'll start to receive updates, and the new shows will be rolled out to you on a weekly basis. Again, we're looking at a March release date for that ADN Live. And so you'll subscribe and you'll be able to see, every episode as it comes out.
Is there a subscription fee for this? That's awesome.
No, I don't like doing things that have a subscription fee to them. And we found at Glidewell that we, there was no reason for us to kind of charge. It was a good way to kind of promote the laboratory this way. And the same thing with AEGIS too. If anybody's going to pay for it, it'll be, sponsors on the show or something like that. But no, always free to dentists and their staff.
I love that. That's doing good while doing good, man.
Hopefully.
I love
Vicky,
it.
we have one more question for him.
Okay.
Go for it.
Dr. DiTolla, you've got one answer and you can only pick one or the other. Bacon or eggs?
I have an answer. Working with AEGIS. AEGIS is in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And when I stay there, I stay in Princeton, which is only about 20 minutes away from where AEGIS really is, because I fell in love with Princeton while I was in college. And so I love going back to that town and staying there. And they have something there. Are either of you familiar with pork roll? Have you heard of pork roll? It's a very New Jersey thing. And I just found out about it because of that. So pork roll to me is the new bacon, but no one's ever heard of it anywhere besides New Jersey. So I actually have pork roll in my refrigerator in California now. I'm now flying around with pork roll. I have
the title of our podcast. Pork roll is the new bacon.
Oftentimes I'll have pork roll in my pocket and I'll just carry it right onto the airplane. That could be
that passes TSA.
But my answer is eggs. And
you changed it on us.
Here's why. The answer is eggs. First of all, Weight Watchers doesn't even count eggs anymore. They're so healthy at only 70 calories. They're the perfect mix of fat and protein, the perfect snack. I get obsessed with eggs and have been obsessed with eggs, and I go through phases. I'm in a poaching phase right now. But first of all, one of the things I mastered was British scrambled eggs, then French scrambled eggs, then a French omelet, the way the French do omelets. Americans, we're the worst at omelets. There's not supposed to be any color on an omelet. So my fun time to cook is always breakfast when I'm up in the morning. And so I'm going through poached eggs now and trying to figure out how to make the most perfect poached eggs. Or if you ever post photos in the show notes, I will send you a picture of one of my omelets sitting ironically next to some bacon. And I would love for that.
Is it a pork roll? Can you do a pork roll omelet?
You can do a pork roll omelet. I'm still such an amateur at pork roll that I won't send any pictures yet. I'm still trying to decide how thick to slice it or if it should be diced. But
What a purist.
I've mastered the omelet. So when we're done, I'll send you a picture and maybe you can put it in the
Mike,
show.
I'm going to, Chad, I'm going out on a limb here. Mike,
do it.
If we ever do an Everyday Practices live event, and we're going to take it to New Jersey, would you be one of our guest lecturers there so that we can talk about pork roll and poached eggs?
In fact, I will do it in any state you happen to be in. Doesn't just have to be New Jersey. I travel with pork roll. So yeah, if you guys ever do a live one, that's my favorite thing to do. I love doing live podcasts.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you guys. Appreciate it.
You have a great afternoon, and that's our ending of this episode of Everyday Practices.
Bring your lunch or take us to the gym again next week to improve your everyday practices. Also, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list. Now get out there and win with Everyday Practices.